fake martial art.
I don't think it's the most efficient form of movement.
Today we're talking about why this kind of stuff doesn't work.
I'm sitting here watching these YouTubers.
They would actually admit that they don't have confidence either.
So for me, it's going to be an F tier.
Means maybe 1 out of 1,000 times you're gonna land it.
I don't think it's real. I don't think you develop confidence in what you're doing.
These martial artist YouTubers love to talk about capoeira.
I can tell you one thing, it is not going to work in the way that you hope it will.
I wouldn't invest my time in it.
Capoeira is completely useless.
Can they even take in all the complexity that capoeira offers?
I never tried capoeira.
I've done one class in my life.
I've never taken capoeira.
I'll let you judge for yourself. Let's see what do they know about capoeira's origins.
It had to do with African slaves hiding the way they fought within this dance because fighting was illegal. And there's some stories that people used to pretty much put knives on their feet.
I'm sure in its traditions, it was a little less dance related.
Capoeira traces its roots back to the 16th century in Brazil during slavery. Enslaved Africans developed capoeira as self-defense, disguised as a form of dance and ritual. It allowed them to train and defend themselves against their oppressors while avoiding suspicion. African dance forms and various indigenous fighting techniques from Brazil heavily influenced capoeira's movements. It evolved in the impoverished communities of Brazil, where practitioners formed groups known as capoeira gangs.
Now let's see what they had to say about its efficiency.
I'm very doubtful because
The good,
It gives you incredible endurance.
the bad,
It's a lot easier to have a kick, especially when there's a spin, and lean back.
and the ugly.
I want to talk about the most useless martial art that anyone could ever have if they have aspirations to go into MMA.
These guys are ranking best martial arts for self-defense. Let's see where they're going to place capoeira.
I never tried capoeira, only seen it in videos. I've seen some videos where somebody gets knocked out in the ring by a capoeira guy, which makes me hopeful. I'm at the same time very doubtful because it's no contact.
What you've seen, the stuff that they put out is no contact. It's my understanding, and this is going to be kind of similar to Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, kind of out of just we're musing based on our experience, which is limited in this case. Capoeira, like Jiu-Jitsu, like many of these words, can mean a lot of things. I know that they do throw very powerful kicks. They probably kick harder than anybody. I'll say this about capoeira, they're definitely in shape. You can't do capoeira and not be in shape. But I don't know, maybe it's somewhere. Now I want to give boxing a C and put capoeira a C minus.
I'm thinking about the same thing. Is that okay if we do that just to
Yeah.
Okay.
If we're both thinking it, that must
Right.
mean.
Have you seen that video? There's a fight, like CCTV footage. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, and the guy misses.
Right.
He comes like way later with this beautiful kick that's like a mile away. I will say this, there's another video out right now where two capoeiristas, I guess, sorry, they're doing the sparring, the kind of dance thing that they're doing, and they're hitting each other a little bit, and it gets a little choppy, and one of them kicks the other one, and the other one kicks him back, and then he just throws kind of a Muay Thai round kick or something, and just kicks him just to hurt him, and the guy that got kicked, his first instinct is to grab one of the damn musical instruments and bash the guy with it.
This video went so viral and it gives capoeira such a bad reputation.
And I'm like, man, if capoeira was all that, you know, wouldn't you just go capoeira the guy back? You know,
Right, I
grab
know.
something to hit him with, and it stopped looking like they were not doing the jingo while they were hitting each other.
I also actually had that same experience essentially with Aikido. We trained these elaborate movements all the time, but every time I was attacked, I would just punch the guy, and I wasn't even taught how to punch properly.
Hold
Right.
with one hand, punch with the other.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. That's where I started thinking like, wait, this is weird. Why am I not falling back to my training? I'm falling back to something random.
Because it was never developed under pressure.
Right, exactly.
I give Bullshido and McDojos a bigger pass than most people because everyone's always talking about false confidence. I don't think it's real. I don't think you develop confidence in what you're doing without sparring. Whatever you were gonna do before you took a fake martial art, that's what you do after you took a fake martial art if you never sparred.
I can attest to that. Actually, I did try to convince myself that I'm confident while I was doing Aikido, but I never really was. And I met a bunch of Aikido guys when I would talk to them more closely. They would actually admit that they don't have confidence.
I actually agree with this opinion. I think it might be interesting if we had in capoeira some sort of a league or a competition which the rules will allow full contact, and this will definitely breed another type of capoeira practitioners that are interested in this kind of stuff and training, especially for contact competitions, similar to what's happening with combat karate. I myself have spent a lot of time of putting this whole idea of using capoeira to improve your martial arts for you guys, and I've spent extra time just to make it free for everybody. I've put everything I know throughout the years in this. Every bit of expertise, knowledge, and every secret I've covered, they're all in this. All that I just described starts with an ebook. It will show you how to get the most out of capoeira for your martial art to ensure you win. You will get daily insights and a bunch of free bonuses of precisely how to use capoeira to your advantage. It's all in the description for you guys. This video is titled Why Capoeira Doesn't Work.
Today we're talking about why this kind of stuff doesn't work. That's me trying capoeira, by the way. It's something that I've done one class in my life. I don't know too much about the actual sport aside from viewing it, but I can tell you one thing, it is not going to work in the way that you hope it will. If you think for street self-defense or ring fighting, you're gonna be successful if you train in this martial art. So today we're gonna break down about 5 reasons why you should be doing capoeira for fun, but not for self-defense or for fighting. First off, I want to say that any martial art, no matter how ridiculous it is okay if you're just there for a little bit of fitness, a little bit of socialization, and for fun. It's all good. I have nothing against it. And something like Aikido. I did Aikido for 2 or 3 years. I absolutely loved it. But at the same time, I was training in other martial arts so I could get that fun aspect of Aikido, you know, the things where you get to flip the guy over and lock them up. And then you also have your fighting, so you know you can actually defend yourself. Some people are gonna roll their eyes and go, Gabriel, you know, Aikido with its throws and its arm locks is much more real than punching and kicking, but I'll tell you what, take somebody who's trained Aikido for a year and somebody who's boxed for a year, put them in a room and see who walks out. Same idea with capoeira. Some of the most athletic people, the most gifted people I have seen at doing cartwheels, all sorts of fancy kicks, busting out backflips, insane stuff. But is it actually going to work when you're put into a cage or a ring with somebody who's been training in a, let's call it real fight sport, Muay Thai, kickboxing? No, capoeira is not going to work.
Whenever I talk about capoeira for martial arts or for MMA, what I'm talking about is the contribution that capoeira can have to your skills, to your body, and to your cognitive performance. I'm not actually talking about using these kicks or takedowns in the fight. I'm talking about how it totally changes the way you move your body, where you're able to even go backwards. Only that by itself will bring much more complexity into your movement and into your fighting skills.
So let's just dive right in to a number of reasons why this fight sport is not practical. First off, there are hardly any punches in capoeira. When I went and I started researching a little bit more, watching what people down in Brazil do when there's, you know, the big circle and there's the guys in the middle, occasionally, yes, you'll see them from the outside throwing some punches, but then when they start really engaging and they get close, it's all about the kicks because there's a lot of evasion in capoeira. The kicks are just missing. It's a lot easier to have a kick, especially when there's a spin, and lean back than it is for somebody to start throwing punches and you're trying to dodge and weave. So yes, there are not a lot of punches in capoeira, and because of that, to me, it's not a fight sport that is going to be super successful in self-defense or in ring fighting. The next reason why I think capoeira really doesn't work is the sparring is not realistic enough. There's not that actual, oh, this guy's really trying to hit me and I have to actually do things that actually are going to be effective. There's that flow between you and your sparring partner, and without actually having shots landing and really having to block them, and without having to actually try and put combinations together that might work, it's not a realistic form of sparring that is going to help you prepare for an actual fight or a real fight on the street where you have to defend yourself. My next problem with it is fancy kicks are hard to land. And there are going to be many people out there who go, Gabriel, Look at this clip. This is a capoeira dude knocking out somebody else in a high-level fight, or a semi-high-level fight. We don't really see it too much in Bellator or in UFC, but we will see guys occasionally who, you know, they'll put their hand down to the ground, and yes, they'll bust out one of those big spinning wheel kicks, or they'll do a tornado kick or something like that. And yes, it does work, but that doesn't mean it's easy to land, and that doesn't mean that, you know, 50% of the time, or 25% of the time, or even 10% of the time you're gonna have success with that. It means maybe 1 out of 1,000 times you're gonna land it. And things like flying side kicks, or jumping 540 tornado kicks or things like that. Yeah, Raymond Daniels can do them. How many other people are gonna be able to execute that? So the fancy kicks are much less effective than just blasting in a big single kick. And because of that, and knowing that these fancy kicks are not gonna land very often, I don't think it's good for the sport of capoeira to compete against others where they're actually gonna have the legit techniques that are really gonna hurt people. The next reason the sport, in my mind, is not really effective and doesn't work is when you're working with a training partner, most of the time for sparring, it's gonna be not with the partner, but against the partner. In Muay Thai, kickboxing, boxing, jiu-jitsu, you're not flowing with them, you're trying to work against them. But in capoeira, there's this flow, and it's almost non-resistant training. But we want resistance. We want this guy evading shots, or when we get into the clinch, really wrestling. And we want to get used to what it's like when somebody is not helping us along. And in capoeira, it looks like a lot of back and forth, a lot of flow. We're just making life easier for one another. But again, that's not gonna help us when we actually have to step in and fight for real. The final reason that you can tell that capoeira does not really work is they don't train with gear. They don't spar with gear. When you don't have on gloves and you don't have on shin pads, that means you're actively not trying to hit your partner. And because of that, that person is not getting used to actually having to block real shots. And any sport, any fight sport that is actually contact-based, that really works in the ring or the cage, they're gonna have on protective gear, because you just can't train without protective gear unless maybe it's jiu-jitsu. Sure, in jiu-jitsu you can roll because there's less impact, but any striking sport, we need that protection so we're not eating knuckles or we're not taking shins to the side of the head. As soon as you don't need that, it either means number one, the sport is not realistic, or number two, you're going so darn light.
I hope you already know about this UFC fighter called Eliseu Capoeira that knocked out Sean Strickland. This video is called Capoeira Wizard Dominates UFC.
The world of mixed martial arts has evolved a lot over the years, and people, especially MMA fans, are already familiar with the lethality of martial arts like jiu-jitsu, boxing, sambo, or wrestling. Thanks to the UFC and the other elite MMA organizations, we can now know what techniques from each martial art works best in a real fight. While some martial arts like BJJ and wrestling prove to be essential for MMA, others like Tai Chi or Aikido, not so much. If you ever played Tekken 3, you'll probably recall that there was a character named Eddie Gordo, whose individual style was Capoeira. Although this character had unique movements and was hard to defeat, people in real life usually overlook this martial art as ineffective. Meet Eliseu Zaleski dos Santos, the Brazilian UFC competitor who proved the doubters wrong and showed the capoeira effectiveness in the octagon by delivering spectacular jaw-dropping knockouts.
Eliseu Zaleski dos Santos living up to the capoeira moniker here tonight.
His fighting style is a complex puzzle, and most of his victories are won by capoeira-style knockouts. We will look at who Eliseu Zaleski dos Santos is and how this athlete used the capoeira techniques as a primary weapon to neutralize and beat his opponents.
Look at
that! Dos Santos is like, what do you want me to do?
Right. Stop the fight! Stop the fight!
Zaleski transitioned to MMA at 20 and started competing in this sport professionally soon after. He successfully implemented capoeira tools such as various striking combos, dodges, and powerful kicks, as well as the ability to switch his stance from orthodox to southpaw easily. One significant advantage that Zaleski possesses thanks to capoeira is the ability to strike from any position, especially with roundhouse kicks. The crafty stand-up combined with the superior BJJ credentials allowed Eliseu to create a unique fighting style that turned out to be very effective in MMA.
This video is called the dark side of capoeira that no one talks about.
When you look at capoeira, it looks like this kind of dance martial art, this funky dance martial art that everyone knows about, that takes you back to your favorite fighting games, Tekken, Eddie Gordo, I think his name is. And, you know, there's a lot around capoeira that I think made it hyper popular for good reason. It's incredibly beautiful. It's incredibly acrobatic. It's a great fitness martial art. It has a lot of aspects to it that involve rhythm, music, camaraderie. But then there's this other side to capoeira that no one talks about. And it's tied into the roots of capoeira. Now, in case you don't know, capoeira is an Afro-Brazilian martial art, and it had to do with African slaves hiding the way they fought within this dance because fighting was illegal. And there's some stories that people used to pretty much put knives on their feet. And if you look at like Capoeira Angola and even Regional, there's movements like this because their hands were shackled. So there's a huge cultural aspect to capoeira. But what people don't talk about is that initial root of fighting being such a relevant part of the system. Capoeira is a fighting system. And I see so many videos online talking about, oh, capoeira is useless. Capoeira wouldn't work in a street fight. Capoeira this, capoeira that. Let me just first talk about the attributes that capoeira builds. Capoeira builds incredible attributes for fighting. And when you're looking at a martial art, again, you're not looking at an end all in every single martial art. You're looking at what the martial art gives you that will then benefit you for your goal. And let's say in this case, the goal is street fighting. So what does capoeira give you? It gives you incredible endurance, incredible, what's the word? Proprioception. I've used this before and it's confused me, but this awareness of your body and where you are in the world. That's an incredibly valuable skill for fighting. Capoeira guys are only beaten by gymnasts, in my opinion, in that world. They know where they are at all times. You will not off balance a capoeira guy, which is the next part. They're balanced. They are able to achieve balance in the worst possible situations. They're also able to close distance incredibly fast. Their timing is unbelievable. Their agility is unbelievable. Look, I can go on and on. Capoeira gives you a bunch of physical attributes that are wonderful, both for fighting and in life in general. Most capoeira guys I know, when they transition to jiu-jitsu, they are unstoppable at it. And I actually started training capoeira because I thought it was a great supplement to my jiu-jitsu. There's a lot in capoeira that people, kind of like when you look at karate bunkai, or karate kata, they don't understand what it's actually doing. Well, in capoeira, a lot of the time, these movements have direct application to your grappling. The way you move on the ground is directly connected to the movements you see in capoeira. It makes your hips incredible. It makes the way you backspin to pass a guard incredible, or to go into S-mount. It makes your double legs incredible. It gives you all these skill sets that directly translate to grappling.
But here's another martial arts YouTuber that is ranking different fighting styles. Let's see where he is going to place capoeira.
Okay, so now we're going to talk about capoeira. Capoeira is I'm sure in its traditions, it was a little less dance related. Capoeira is all about the kicks, really flowing movements where you have to understand body control. I think it has a really cool base in understanding how to move your body. I don't know as much about capoeira as I do some of these other styles. I've taken probably 5 of these styles in my past. I've never taken capoeira. From what I've seen from capoeira, I probably would take a couple months of it, but I wouldn't invest a lot of my time in it. And because of that, it's going to be our first F tier. I said this earlier. That doesn't mean you can't use anything from it. Do they have powerful kicks? Yes. I don't think it's the most efficient form of movement. So for me, it's going to be in the F tier.
This video is titled, Why Capoeira is Effective in a Street Fight. This video is called, Wildest Capoeira Knockouts in MMA.
Look, we all love a good overhand knockout punch, but when it comes to mixed martial arts, there is no knockout technique more electrifying than a spinning kick. And the capoeira expert uses these techniques far better than anyone else. These are the wildest capoeira KOs in MMA. Classic example of clean capoeira technique comes in next, as Cairo Rocha span with the fluidity of a man who has been throwing these kicks for decades. Everything from the speed and accuracy to the perfect judgment of the distance between himself and his target. It was all perfect. Some fighters can throw spinning attacks like a boxer throws a jab. Total efficiency of movement. And when this kick landed, its impact was immediate. a brutal knockout and a highlight that any striker would be proud of. Capoeira has its drawbacks as a base skill for MMA, but when it's good, it can be absolutely lethal. If you don't have the courage to take risks, you're never going to end up with moments like this, and for the former UFC fighter Brian Ebersole, he decided to attempt the most bizarre technique in all of combat sports out of nowhere during this regional level fight. For some reason, Ebersole took it upon himself to throw a cartwheel kick with absolutely zero telegraphing. Sometimes, when less skilled fighters throw spinning hook kicks, they throw it without truly aiming and hope for the best. But a guy like this, who has clear talent for spinning, was so flexible that he was able to spin his head around faster than the kick, taking note of his target before his shot landed. In other words, he knew exactly where his kick was going, looking over his shoulder to ensure maximal impact. And while we don't know for certain if he has had capoeira training, it's pretty clear from his fluidity that there is at least some influence there.
If you still doubt that capoeira has a lot to do in the martial arts space,
I mean, I study capoeira.
Watch Joe Rogan and one of UFC's top 3 fighters discuss does capoeira work for MMA.